Hello everybody. I want to make a quick video to emphasize that the variance and standard deviation are calculated differently depending on whether you have a population or a sample. And in other videos I have highlighted the difference between a population and a sample. So quick run through of the formulas in case you wanted to do things on paper with pencil. For populations, N is the sample size. That's the same no matter if you're talking about a population or a sample. The mean is also the same, except for a population, it goes by the Greek letter mu. And for a sample, we usually label it x bar. But the variance, okay, for populations goes by the symbol sigma squared, is the sum of each data point minus the mean squared over n, where n is the sample size. And then the standard deviation, known by the symbol sigma, is the square root of the variance. Okay. For samples, okay, n is the sample size, that doesn't change. X bar is the mean. You calculate the mean the same way, whether you're talking about a population or a sample. And the variance for a sample goes by the symbol s squared. But the formula is different. It's the sum of the data points minus the mean squared over n minus 1, the sample size minus 1. But once you have the variance, the standard deviation, going by the symbol s, is the square root of the variance. So the only difference, if we look at these, is in the variance, we divide by n, the sample size, for the population, and for a sample, we divide by n minus 1. Okay? All right, now, say we want to use Statcrunch though, okay? Statcrunch, whoops, I misspelled Statcrunch. Hold on a second. I'll fix that. Statcrunch, by default, will calculate the sample, standard deviation, and variance. That's what it does. So if you wanted the population, variance, or standard deviation, Statcrunch does not produce that, okay? All right, but we can convert by this formula. You can take the sample variance or standard deviation, which Statcrunch will give you, multiply by n minus 1 over n, where n is the sample size, and you'll get the population variance or standard deviation, okay? So let's try that, all right? And here's the question I have in mind. So it says numbers of regular season wins for 10 football teams are given, and determine the range, mean, variance, and standard deviation for the population. Okay, so there's that word, population. I'm dealing with population. I'm trying to find the population variance and the population standard deviation. Now, I went ahead and opened Statcrunch up, and I calculated the variance and standard deviation, okay? But, as I told you, those are sample variances and standard deviations, and that's different, okay? But, you know, I told you how you could convert, so look. Let me see if I can get this all on the screen, okay? All right, so if you take the sample variance, okay, there it is, right there, 19.344444, okay, times n minus 1 over n, where n is 10 here, so that would make it times 9 over 10. You'll get 17.41. So that will be the population variance, 17.41. Now, when I go back to the question, you know, I put 17.4 because it says round to the nearest tenth. Okay. Now, from there, I know that once you find the population variance, or sorry, the population variance, you can take the square root of that and find the standard deviation, okay? So, I've got the population variance. Here's the unrounded number, but I know that if I take the square root of that, I'll get the population standard deviation. I got 4.2, rounding that to 1 decimal place. So that's why I put 4.2 in there, okay? All right, so sometimes in the questions, you'll be dealing with populations versus samples. It will say in the question, all right? The formulas on paper are different, but if we use Statcrunch, there's a fairly simple conversion formula, right? You get the sample, variance, or standard deviation in Statcrunch, and you just multiply this number and you get the population, variance, or standard deviation that you may need as an answer to the question.